Germany to Cuba, and so they thought that they had certification to be able to enter into Cuba. So they made the long voyage, only to find out when they came to Cuba that they weren't able to enter because their entry certifications were revoked. So the ship made its way to the Miami shores, and Roosevelt would not allow 936 Jews who escaped Nazi Germany, would not allow them in. They had to go back to Germany. Many died on the way back, and the remainder of the 936 Jews were massacred by Hitler. So where are we today? The Jewish population is dwindling. The Arab Muslim population in the United States is increasing. So if you look back to Roosevelt's time, when he was opening his arms, so to speak, to minority groups, the shift from the Democratic Party, from their allegiance and their support of Jews, is now shifting to the Muslim population because there's millions more of them than there are of Jews. Case in point, the House resolution, the anti-Semitism resolution that failed the Jews, instead of calling out Ilhan Omar on her dangerous anti-Semitic tropes that she perpetuates by tweeting and speaking at speaking engagements, they decided to sell out the Jews and make this blanket resolution of including all forms of discrimination. Well, where did that get them? Where did that get them with Ilhan Omar? You all recall that after this resolution passed, do you remember the speech that she had with, some people did something, completely minimizing what had happened during 9/11. That's a result of Nancy Pelosi and the Chuck Schumers and the progressive Jews for not holding her accountable. And then you have Rashida Tlaib. As a result of calling her out as a Jewish, Israeli-born politician, I made international headlines. Her friends over at Hamas have threatened my life. Active threats. I've been threatened with rape by her friends over in Michigan. So where did that get us with Rashida Tlaib? Well, let's see. She accuses Jews of dual loyalty. So in my city, if you go to City Hall and you look at the wall where the elected officials' pictures are, so I'm the only one that was born in a foreign country. Everyone else was born in the United States. The only one with the backdrop of an American flag would be mine. And I was elected in November 2016, and 2017 is when I actually started my term. And I was told in the city, no, that's not how we do it. And I said, that's how I do it. So, this country is one of the best countries in the world. I'd say Israel is right after the United States. So I'm a very, very lucky girl to live here. So we have Rashida Tlaib, who supports the BDS movement. Let's talk about the BDS movement. And I'd like to challenge you all. When you're speaking about BDS to other people, please don't just say BDS movement, because that actually minimizes what it really is. BDS is a genocidal movement. It calls for a one-state solution, and only a one-state solution, and their mantra is, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. So let me tell you what Palestine will be free of. Jews, and second to Jews are the infidels, which are the Christians. It starts with the Jews, and if the Christians don't convert, they have hell to pay. So let's not make a mistake about what the BDS movement really is. Then we have Rashida Tlaib a couple of days ago speaking about the Holocaust. Saying that she had a very calming effect when she thinks about the Holocaust. So her friends over here are going to say that we are taking her words out of context. Her friends are going to say that we're attacking her because she's a woman of color. That's all part of Takia, by the way. Takia. When you have a woman in Congress talking about the Holocaust and talking about how it's a calming effect, what she failed to say during this podcast interview is that what she was trying to say was that on the backs of the Palestinians, Jews survived. What she forgot to mention was that the Grand Mufti at the time not only collaborated but negotiated with Hitler. And since then, decade after decade after decade, when Israel was declared a state in 1948, decade after decade after decade, Palestinian radical Muslims, I won't blame all Palestinians, but radical Palestinian Muslims are responsible for tens and tens and tens of Jewish lives being slaughtered in Israel. Palestinians, and again, radical Palestinians have not given Israelis any type of refuge. None. So I don't understand why she's not challenged on it. And progressive Democrats, progressive Jews, pose the greatest danger to the Jewish community. Even more so than Iran. And I'll tell you why. Progressive Democrats hate Jews. I sit next to one in my city, 21 years old, red lipstick, black hair, and glasses. Remind you of anyone in Washington?
29-year-old bartender.
So she's a progressive. And after Ilhan Omar makes that disgusting statement about some people did something, I went out of my way and said, she's 21. And let me give her the benefit of the doubt. So I texted her, and we're not on speaking terms because she's one of the ones that is very good friends with a certain person that's with Kara out of another city here in the state of Florida. So we're not on speaking terms. But I said, you know what? Let me just educate her. And I tried to educate her about 9/11 and said I was really disappointed. And do you know what her response was? Taking pictures with Ilhan Omar a few weeks ago and posting them and saying how proud she was.
Disgusting. Yes.
Yep.
So progressive Democrats hate Jews, they hate white men, they definitely hate Republicans. And progressive Jews pose the greatest danger to the Jewish community and to Israel. Because what happens is, you'll have non-Jewish Americans look and say, why are Jews speaking with such hate and venom when they speak about Republicans, when they speak about Donald Trump? Donald Trump has done so much to help the Jewish community.
Yes, he has.
You don't have to be a Republican. You don't have to be a conservative. But for my God, if you're a Jewish person, just shh, quiet. If you don't agree with his way of speaking or his ideologies, I think back to Germany before the Holocaust, and German Jews said, I'm German first and Jewish second, because they thought that would give them refuge and that would save them from the Holocaust. And who was massacred first?
Jews.
German Jews. So with that, I will say that progressive Democrats, Jewish progressives, have me very, very worried, because the language that is used in Congress, it's acceptable language now to throw out anti-Jewish, anti-Israel tropes. It has become mainstream It has become part of the day-to-day lexicon. So, in my city, after I was censured in January 23rd of this year, I sponsored a resolution condemning BDS. It's one of the first resolutions not speaking about blanket statements of anti-Semitism, but actually calling out BDS for what it is. It is a genocidal movement. You know, people talk about the Palestinian plight, but they never speak about the 850,000 Sephardic Jews that were ousted out of Muslim countries. If you look at Gaza and you look at the West Bank, you don't have one Jewish person living in Gaza or the West Bank. But if you go to Israel, you have about 2 million Arab Muslims living and enjoying the freedom and democracy that Jews and Christians alike enjoy in the state of Israel. When it comes to Venezuela, I was in Washington last week and met with Ambassador Torrio, who was appointed by President Trump. And we had a meeting about Venezuela. And in my city, my fellow colleagues, I'm trying to be professional, will say, Anabelle, this has nothing to do with city business, advocating for BDS or for Venezuelans or the other resolutions that I've tried to sponsor. And I tell them that when 45% of the Hispanic population in my city, in Hallandale Beach, are Venezuelans, it does affect city business.
Yes.
So we're trying to have a dialogue and to come to an understanding of how do we expose what is going on in Venezuela. Human rights crisis. The average Venezuelan has lost 25 pounds. Communicable diseases are coming back because they don't have vaccinations. But here's a common danger that Israel shares with Venezuelans and how it's going to trickle to the United States. Hezbollah. Hezbollah, the largest training facilities or camps other than Lebanon for Hezbollah, come out of Venezuela. And if you think that when we have immigrants coming through our borders, that they have not infiltrated, that Hezbollah is not infiltrated, that ISIS is not infiltrated, that we don't have sleeper cells of terrorists in the United States, you have another thing coming to you, and that's to the progressive Democrats, obviously, not to this crowd, and definitely the Jewish Democrats. So I am very, out of everything bad, something good comes out of it. January, I met so many people. There were hundreds of people who came and supported me. And I met Michelle, and I met other people in this room. Eitan Ronan and I met. He came and supported me. I'd never met before. Eitan and I will be partnering up, working to educate people about the BDS movement, to mobilize people for next year's election, to try to educate progressive Jews on the gross mistake. They are on the wrong side of history. Mm-hmm. And God forbid we have another Holocaust, their blood will be on their hands. So thank you so much for having me here.